Have you ever looked at something and just thought, what else can I do with it? Welcome to a new episode in this long-lived and scarce series of Will It Die? The whole concept behind this was that I started growing things in my flat a couple of years ago. It was growing exponentially. I've always wanted to try my hand at natural dyeing. I thought, two things together, perfect. And so I decided to experiment with natural dyeing, but particularly not the traditional historical dyes that we already know work, but I wanted to use things that I had an abundance of to hand. So the first episode in this series was about Mexican mint, which was a plant that a friend gave me and was growing so much in my flat that it hit the ceiling, and I had to do something with it, and I don't like tea, so I know, it's okay. I like coffee. We're all different. But that was the goal behind the series. And so now, a couple of episodes later, whenever I find something nearby that there's an abundance of, that it won't make a dent in the natural ecosystem to take, I decided to keep going. I had a lot of fun learning about natural dyeing, and I think it's really thrilling. So there's something very pleasing about making something out of something natural that is there at your hands, at your fingertips. And so a couple of years ago, I started by buying this book. And this has been my little Bible as I attempt natural dyeing, particularly because I'm not following historical dyes. I'm just dyeing with stuff that's about. So it's really important to know about the concepts. So I thought I would give you a very quick overview of the process for natural dyeing in case you're interested. But it does vary between your material, what you're dyeing, and your dye stuff, whatever you're dyeing with. So the basic steps are a pre-wash of your materials. Mordant, which is a process that you apply to your material that you're dyeing that will help the dye, the color, adhere to the fibres. That's the whole purpose of it. And then you have to create the dye, you have to dye it, and then you have to dry your goods. So those are the basic steps. For this in particular, this episode, this adventure, this experiment, we are using magnolia blossoms. And that is because I have a big magnolia tree in my garden. It looks absolutely stunning. And it did last year as well when we were here for the first time, and it bloomed, and I was just astounded by it. And I just really wanted to do something with it to kind of preserve those blossoms and preserve that memory of beauty, I guess. And so last year I ran out of time before they all fell over, but this year I was determined to get there in time before the British weather turned. And so I've decided to just do it ASAP before all the blossoms disappear. So I don't really know what color magnolia is going to be. I've on purpose not Googled it or searched for other people's experiments because I like the experiment. I like the surprise, the sort of random opportunity. And so I have my trusty little notebook for Will It Die so that I can keep track. This is something that is really recommended for anyone who does any kind of dyeing, is to keep, they call it a recipe book, which I find lovely. But it's where you record exactly how much, in case you want to replicate it as well, but you record exactly how much the proportions are in your process, including your mordant, your amount of dye stuff, your amount of fabric that you're dyeing, how long you did it for, so you can kind of formalize the process a little bit. So for this, I have decided to dye for the first time a garment and not fabric. I usually just dye about a meter or so of fabric as a sort of experiment. But I've decided to give it a go and dye a slip dress that I just finished. I just thought, why not? It was here, it's linen, why not? Basically is my thought behind it. I'd already preemptively thought of this when I was making the dress. So I know that, for example, things like that are made of polyester, such as threads, sewing threads, and notions like zippers won't dye. So I, even though my fabric is white to start with, I did add a sort of cream zipper to it, because even though magnolia blossoms are beautiful pink, I think it'll probably come out a shade of yellow, and that's because most natural plants, leaves, flowers actually dye a yellow. This is just something I've learned from looking at natural dyes. My Mexican mint dyed yellow. So yeah, I think it'll be a yellow. It's just a case of whether it's a pale yellow, a nice yellow, a buttercup yellow. What's it going to be? So my first step is actually to pre-wash, or sometimes called scouring, and to mordant my dress. But I did forage in my own stash, and thank you very much to Hoarder Cat when she first placed an order for the aluminum stuff. I also seem to have bought gall nut extract, which is basically tannin. I am meant to have 10% of the weight of the dry goods, which would make it about 30 grams. Unfortunately, I only have 20, but this is going to have to do because I have no other option. So my first step is to dilute this in very hot water. Have to be very careful. Tannins can actually be toxic, so I have to be careful not to inhale or apply to skin, eyes, whatever. It's in very hot water in a pot that is not going to be, it's not food related, and my trusty dyeing spoon. So I'm going to dissolve that in very hot water, then add it to my big pot on the stove, which is just bringing up the temperature. And then I'm going to add my scoured goods. So scouring is just when you pre-wash stuff. You can do it in fancy ways over the stove, but I usually just throw it in the washing machine. So I've pre-washed my dry goods, which are no longer dry, dissolving the gall nut extract into the hot bath, turn off the heat, leave it for as long as I have to, because then I'm going to do the second dye bath for the second mordant bath later tonight. So they'll be in there for about 6 hours. I think the minimum they recommend is 1 to 2 hours. Overnight is best. We're going to go with 6 hours. Okay. I've just realized actually that the instructions said that this was a room temperature procedure, so I've just turned off the heat. You only needed very hot water to dissolve the extract, and then you can tip it in. And it says it should turn like a murky brown, and it is. It looks a bit like very diluted tea. So I think it's time to dip our fabric in. Okay, so with my fabric mordanted, I then went and got my magnolia blossoms, which I've just put on the heat here. The book recommended for petals to bring it up slowly to heat for about 15 minutes and then to leave it to infuse, I guess, for 30 minutes to an hour. I think I'm going to leave it for 30 minutes. But something that I noticed that was super cool was when I put the blossoms in, they immediately turned orange. I guess they scalded from the heat. But I'm glad I did do this today. So I tried to use mostly just the blossoms that were already sort of falling apart. But I did give them a clean because I also picked up some off the ground. But as soon as I put it on the heat, it started hailing outside. So I think it was about time to do this, otherwise I would have missed my chance. So yeah, this just needs to bring up to temperature now, and then I will strain it and add my fabric. Merlin, Merlin, Merlin. And that is it. I thought I'd wear the same cardigan from the intro so that you could kind of see it with the yellow of the dress, because I think it looks quite nice. But yeah, that was a lovely experience. I'm just really glad that I had a use for the magnolia blossoms instead of them just, you know, decaying on the grass. And so whenever I look at this slip dress, I will now think of my magnolia blooms. And yeah, I guess I'll just have to keep a look around my parks and woods and see if there's anything else that could maybe be experimented with. Let me know if you like this kind of video. If you're interested in natural dyeing, let me know what you've dyed with before. Things, maybe not traditional things like madder or things, or like indigo or cochineal, but like things that you might have just found around, or things that are a bit more common. Yeah, let me know if you ever tried anything like that before. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you very soon.